Many people have said America faces existential threat. If that's true, do you think that threat comes from China or our deviation from the founding principles of this country?
They're closely connected because what China is doing is they're watching and fueling this. We have 360,000 students, usually from China, and we have about 1% that are actively engaged in espionage. Professors found out to have been giving information to China. China is always poised to test and probe the United States. And it studies in a very sophisticated manner the domestic scene, and then it regurgitates criticism. And it's very good at that. But until now, it's been bewildered how to make that more effective.
In part 2 of my discussion with Professor Victor Davis Hanson, we discussed the existential threat America faces and its assessment of the true state of the Republic. This is Zooming in China. I'm Simone Gao. Yeah, you have talked about the decay of the American institutions. Does that have anything to do with how America has been treating China?
Absolutely, because we have a large segment of the population who, although they're the most leisured and the most affluent civilization in history, and surely in our history, but somehow the wealth and the leisure of the United States has created a generation that questions our founding, questions of the post-war period, basically under the precept that if the United States is not perfect, then it's not good. And because it's better than the other alternative, doesn't matter. We demand it be perfect, even from people who've done very well by it. So these internal dissensions make it very hard to unify the population, especially in matters of American blood and treasure spent abroad. But I think there's a reaction growing against what I would call the woke movement. People are starting to wake up and they're saying, whatever the politics involved, no nation can exist long when it removes statutes, when it changes names, when it mandatorily sends professors into re-education workshops, when it calls, 69% of the population, the white population, racist, and it's just not going to work. It won't work. And so they're now saying, you got to stop that. It's gone on long enough. So I see that there's going to be a reaction to that. It's already started. But yes, it has, because you got to remember what China does. China takes every criticism of the United States, and you saw that in Alaska, that the left articulates, and then they adopt it. So then they go into and say, you people don't have any right to talk to us. You're racist. Your own people say. And that's what's very dangerous about it. China's got a much more sophisticated propaganda than the Soviet Union ever did.
Right. Many people have said America faces existential threat. If that's true, do you think that threat comes from China or it comes from our deviation from the founding principles of this country?
Well, right now, they're closely connected because what China is doing is they're watching and fueling this. We have 360,000 students, usually from China, and we have about 1%, 3,000 or 4,000 that are actively engaged in espionage. We have professors that almost monthly are found out to have been giving information to China. So China is always poised to test and probe the United States. And it studies in a very sophisticated manner the domestic scene, and then it regurgitates criticism. And it's very good at that. But until now, it's been bewildered how to make that more effective. But now with all of this racial and ethnic and ideological dissension, and because it's coming from the left, China now says to them, well, we're leftists, we're communists. What you people are really wanting, you're wanting something like us. So that they're trying to ally themselves with this leftist movement that is in power now, at least in the presidency, and a 50-50 Senate and a little bit of House margin. But it's my belief that they are overplaying their hand, both the people domestically and China. And in the midterm, there's going to be a resounding rejection of this policy in the House and in the Senate, and it's going to be unified again. But so I think it's what I'm trying to say is that it's very important for Taiwan and countries in similar situations to be very vigilant and very deterrent in the next 2 or 3 years until sanity returns to the United States.
Right. We have talked about America's problem a lot, but China has problems too. For example, the CCP thinks that they can adopt a free market approach and capitalism, but they can bypass the constitutional democracy and they would still be successful and their regime can last. Do you think that's true? Do you think eventually that this system might crash?
I don't know if it'll crash, but it will not be as effective. You can't have a country whose ideological propaganda is communitarianism, that we're all going to share, and have 400 million people never been to a Western doctor. And the reason that they are scared of Taiwan is that Taiwan has been able to achieve a level of constitutional freedom and affluence that's pretty much uniform through the population. Not that it doesn't, like every country, have poor, but it's been an amazing achievement. But they have deliberately to obtain their prosperity, they have written off a large number of the rural population. They have an elite that's entirely corrupt. There's no transparency. There's no independent judiciary. There's no independent press. There's no concept of due process. There's no First Amendment. There's no Second Amendment. And so they think that that doesn't really matter. But eventually, I agree with you, it'll catch up to them. It always has in history, whether it's the Third Reich or communist Russia, the Soviets, or whether it was Cuba that's a mess, or Venezuela, or whether it's Mao's China. So I don't think the present system is sustainable. I'm not sure that they think it's sustainable, but they feel that the Communist Party and those that support it are going to be in a very enviable position for 4 or 5 years, and they want to strike when they can and get as much out of it as they can. And so I think that's why it's very important that the West, that Europe, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Australia, and America coordinate their efforts to put pressure on China to contain it. Because if we can do that, then I think its internal contradictions will eventually overwhelm it. Mm-hmm. And then the Chinese people would be, what everybody wants in the West is the Taiwanese model to be applied to all of mainland China. And that's what China is scared to death of. They're scared everybody says, why do they have to destroy Taiwan? They have to destroy Taiwan. It's not Japan, it's not South Korea, it's not Australia. These are Chinese nationals, people that are ethnically, racially identical in many ways to the Chinese mainland. And yet they have created this successful, this ethical, this moral, and this equitable society right in front of everybody. And every day it exists, it's an advertisement to millions in China that we could be like Taiwan if we would just do what Taiwan did. And they can't allow that to happen. So every day that Taiwan exists, they feel that they're going to get weaker. And that's why they have to end it. They have to end Taiwan, or eventually people are going to stand up and say, I don't want your model anymore. I want to be like Taiwan. Chinese people are very gifted. When they go to the United States or when they go to Europe, they thrive. When they have their own country, they thrive. But in communist China, they don't. So let's change, and they can't allow that to happen.
Right. This is my last question. Yesterday, I listened to a podcast and you talked about the last chance to save America. I mean, no country, no institution can last forever. So what do you really think about the state of America as of now?
Republics in the West, democracies, constitutional governments, whether it's Greece, the city-state, or whether it's the Florentine Republic or the Roman Republic, they don't die by homicide, they die by suicide. Mm-hmm. And that means that people collectively no longer believe in its founding principles. And why does that happen? It usually happens because of complacency brought on by material success, leisure, freedom, And that's what philosophers going back to Greece, Plato, Aristotle, Cicero in Rome, they all were worried about that. And you are worried about it in your country, and Israel's worried about it, and Japan is worried about it, because our very success of making people very affluent and very free can create a new generation that has an entitlement philosophy. The problem we're having in the United States is that we've reached a point where nobody says, look at all the people who died in World War II or the Civil War to give us this situation. Look at all the people who died in the covered wagons on the frontier. Look at all the people who died uh, fighting different foreign enemies. Look at all the diseases and now we have that inheritance. Instead is, I want more and I want more and damn those. And that's that psyche of victimization where you blame your current unhappiness, real or feigned, on outside others, especially people of the past or the rich or another racial group, that is suicidal. And so, the United States is going to have a dialogue very soon. And the majority of the citizens are going to say this country was never perfect, but it created in 1776 and 1787 a constitutional republic like no other. And for 5% of the world's population, it created a level of wealth and influence that's staggering. And more people come to the United States than all the other countries in the world. And on the year 234 of its existence, we're not going to let a loud minority of pampered citizens tear this society down. I'm sorry. You're welcome to criticize it, but you're going to have to stop trying to destroy it. And if we can do that, we'll be stronger for it. We did that in the 1960s. We did that very clearly. And we've done it before, but this time, with the internet and the COVID aberration of the lockdown, the pandemic, the recession, and now we're being unleashed and the canceled Silicon Valley, it's very much more complex. And so I hope that we can still say, you know what, you can call me a homophobe, you can call me a racist, you can call me a xenophobe, but no country can last unless it has secure and identifiable borders, that it has legal, meritocratic, and diverse immigration, and not illegal and non-meritocratic and mass immigration from one place. It has to have a attitude that it will develop its energy, its food, its productive capacities. It has to have an idea that the law is sacrosanct and you don't get to pick and choose which laws that you obey for ideological reasons. If we can do that, we'll be okay. But I think in the next year, I'm really worried about it. And I'm 67, and I haven't seen anything like this since 1968, when we had rioting and protest and crazy people. And then what put an end to it was Ronald Reagan in 1980. And we have to have some type of restoration of sanity. But it's suicidal right now in the United States. And I think that's why our allies in Israel and Taiwan and Greece and the United States, let me just finish with this thought. What was unique about the United States, it said to the world, if you are a principled, vulnerable people who might be costly in a benefit to cost relationship to us, i.e., if you're Greece and you're a constitutional republic and you're in a war with Turkey, which is not, or you're Armenia and you're bullied by Azerbaijan, or you're Israel and bullied by Iran, or you're Taiwan or bullied by, then we're going to still help you, because we're the only country in the world that would do that. If Taiwan tomorrow depends on the EU for its existence, it will not be in existence. They will never lift a finger for you. No, nor would they lift a finger for Greece if they get in a war with Turkey, nor would they lift a finger for Israel if they're attacked by Iran. The United States is the only country that's possible, because we're irrationally idealistic. So we have to be very careful, because people know that and they rely on us. And if Taiwan can't count on the United States, if Israel can't count on the United States, if Greece cannot count, if Armenia cannot count on the United States, then they won't exist. Their neighbors will swarm them and destroy them. And I think that's very important. Same is true of South Korea. If the moment South Korea does not have the support of the United States, the North Koreans will invade or they'll attack. And so I think that's what we have to, as a country, to realize, that we have responsibilities throughout the world. And we used to know that, but now I'm not sure we do. And so it's, I think Taiwan has been admirably aware of that. And more recently, in the last decade, they have taken measures that have immeasurably, beyond anybody's expectation, appealed to the goodwill of the American people. And the results are quite stunning. They have a level of American support, grassroots support, that I've never seen before. And the irony was that Donald Trump, that a lot of people didn't like for his crassness, but by taking on China the way he did, the left didn't like it because it appealed to people. But when he took on China, he was basically supporting Taiwan. And he was saying, the more he said that China was wrong, the more he said Taiwan was right. So that had a great deal, that people got confident and said, we're not against Chinese people, we're against communist Chinese. And we love Chinese people like we do anybody else that's constitutional. So I think for a variety of reasons, Taiwan is in a much more enviable position vis-a-vis the American people. What I'm worried about is the structure of American government that's under assault by the left.
Yeah, right. It's a great country. It's worth fighting for. Thank you so much, Professor Hanson. I really appreciate the conversation with you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
This concludes our program for today. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our new channel, Zooming in China. We're still producing for the old channel, Zooming in with Simone Gao, but the China-related content will be our focus, so be sure to subscribe. You can also find us on Rumble, Gap, Parler, and Locals. And our intention is to bring you the best China coverage possible. And we do need your help to keep that quality going for the long run. You can help us by making a small donation. The donation link is underneath this video. If you or your business are interested in becoming a sponsor to our program, please email us at info@zoomingin.tv. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Wednesday.